Exactly.
Yeah, your president has created a situation where, unlike any other president in the history of Nigeria, people are crying, we're starving, we're hungry.
Good.
What would you be saying to him if he was listening now?
Why would I be saying anything to him? I shouldn't. Look, you know, there is this error that we make as a collective. We almost constantly, always excuse our situation. We excuse the failings, quote and unquote, of our rulers on incapacity, on mistakes, we find multiple excuses. What we never seem to understand is that they are doing exactly what they set out to do. So how do I tell a man who knew beforehand the exact repercussion of the actions and inactions that he had decided consciously to do, to carry out?
Hello my bessies, welcome to this channel. It's your girl Susu here. If you are not subscribed yet, please do well to subscribe, support this channel, like this video, comment and share. Thank you.
Dele, it's a pleasure to have you on News Central Exclusive.
Thank you very much.
Truly a joy to have you here today. So, there's a lot that I could ask you on this program today, but let's start from where we are today. Nigeria has been described as being in a quandary, in an extremely challenging situation. For the first time, the entire nation seemed to be passing the message across that we're hungry, we're starving, a nation that has the capacity to produce food across every single domain in the country. There's no land in Nigeria that is not arable, even the north. The land is arable. How do you see the situation we find ourselves? Let's start from there. Share your thoughts with us.
Thank you very much once again for having me. I recall warning stridently in the lead up to the 2023 election cycle, long before I ever met Peter Obi or even began to speak for his presidential campaign. I warned that Buhari had effectively destroyed Nigeria and that we would have to reimagine a new country, and whoever was going to have to lead in 2023 had to be someone who had to be willing to take a walk away from the Buhari ruination, reimagine the country, repurpose its people, and get them to begin to pull in a different direction. I wasn't shy about making clear that only a revolution could save Nigeria. And I was also clear in explaining to all who cared to listen at the time that that revolution needn't be violent, that we could do it using the electoral path. I recall spending time, a lot of time, helping people understand the need to register to vote. Quite a lot of organizations and persons were involved. TV stations, even yourself, I remember, everybody got on the bandwagon. We even bought into the illusion being sold by INEC, Okoye, and Yakubu. We believed that we could trust the electoral system, and the people were energized. People registered to vote in record numbers. You and I know what has transpired since then. It is an open secret that the ballot was grabbed, it was snatched, it was grabbed, but they ran, but apparently they've now crashed with it. So when you ask where we are, we're in a place where we already warned before the election that we were heading. It didn't take Tinubu to destroy Nigeria. It took all of us, but Buhari was particularly effective in the ruination of Nigeria. If he had been set the task of destroying Nigeria, he couldn't have done a better job. He weaponized ethnic bigotry, religious bigotry. Corruption is an insult to the English language to call what we witnessed during the years of Buhari corruption. It wasn't corruption. It was the first time in Nigeria where impunity became a governance principle.
I thought people said that was during Jonathan.
No. Please. I recall that in February 2015, a piece that I had written and almost every newspaper house in Nigeria had turned down. It was eventually published by Guardian on Sunday, February 2015. I think it must have been February 15 or something. I can't remember now. And I called it, "Do Not Die in Their War." I made clear, without any apologies to anybody, that Buhari wasn't going to be any change. If anything, it would be worse. And I called attention to all the characters surrounding Buhari to make it very clear that even if you believe in the illusion of a Saint Buhari of Daura, you could not possibly have believed in the sainthood of the many thieves that were around him. I made this clear at the time. Not that Jonathan made it easy for anyone to have spoken for him, and I certainly did not. If we're comparing the two, it can only be a study in comparative failure. Because if Jonathan had been an effective president, we would not have had a situation where a man who left office as president and came back after 30 years without even having the capacity to get a school certificate. Even his dairy farm, with all the subsidies the rich in Nigeria enjoy, never expanded beyond what it was. He didn't write a single book. And then that became the one that was packaged as Messiah for everybody to buy into an illusion. I didn't buy into that illusion, and I warned everybody at the time. But that is not to excuse the failings of Jonathan himself. Jonathan actually prepared the ground for the failure that became Buhari. But the reality is that whoever had come after Buhari would have had to reimagine Nigeria, because Buhari had already effectively destroyed Nigeria.
So would you accept that the ruination of Nigeria did not start under Buhari?
Oh, the ruination of Nigeria was always part and parcel of the seed of his making. Nigeria was always found on multiple lies, and those lies were always going to eventually consume it if we never found the grace to confront those lies with truth. We tell ourselves too many lies in Nigeria, and until we come to the point where we admit to ourselves that these are lies that we have normalized, internalized, and almost edified as truths. You say no victor, no vanquished. Who is telling you that lie? Even the foundation of Nigeria is very foundation. There are too many lies in there. The Nigerian has never been a citizen. He has only ever engaged the Nigerian state either as a member of one tribe or member of a religion, or a member of a family, or a member of a social order. There is no identity for who the Nigerian is. You can't take a Nigerian from anywhere and say that this is the Nigerian regardless of his ethnicity, his religion, his state of origin. There is no such Nigerian. You know who a Ghanaian is, you know who an American is, but who is the Nigerian? There are more Liverpool Football Club supporters in Nigeria than Nigerians. That is a fact. Think about it.
Okay, so let's move to today.
Okay.
As at today, we know what has happened under President Jonathan. We know what has happened under President Buhari. We're now in the era of President Tinubu.
The last horseman of the apocalypse. That is what it is.
Okay, so that's the way you would want to describe it. Some members of the Labour Party and some people who have described themselves as obedient have said President Tinubu is not their president.
Well, I am first and first a creature of law. I am by training also a lawyer. Whether I like it or not, Bola, or let me rephrase that, the man known as Bola Ahmed Tinubu, I forgot to add Adekunle, he is the president of Nigeria. I may like that, I may not like it, whether the legal order was subverted to bring about that fait accompli, whether I believe that they've effectively destroyed Nigeria to bring it about, it does not matter.
So you're a Nigerian?
I'm a Nigerian.
And he is the president
He is the president of Nigeria.
He is your president?
Unfortunately so.
Okay, so that's cleared. So now your president then...
Unfortunately.
Yeah, your president has created a situation where, unlike any other president in the history of Nigeria, people are crying, we're starving, we're hungry.
Good.
What would you be saying to him if he was listening now?
Why would I be saying anything to him? I shouldn't. Look, you know, there is this error that we make as a collective. We almost constantly, always excuse our situation. We excuse the failings, quote and unquote, of our rulers on incapacity, on mistakes, we find multiple excuses. What we never seem to understand is that they are doing exactly what they set out to do. So how do I tell a man who knew beforehand the exact repercussion of the actions and inactions that he had decided consciously to do, to carry out? A man came to power, in my own opinion, fraudulently so, and he then proceeded on the very first day of his stay in office to say subsidy is gone. That singular pronouncement destroyed the savings and well-being of at least about 98% of Nigerians.
But this was the promise of all the other candidates.
But they did say that each person also set aside what program they would put in place, either before or after doing so. Since that was done in May, what has happened? What has happened to the national minimum wage bill that was signed? Which states? How many states are implementing it? What has happened to the price of petroleum products? What has happened to the price of electricity? What has happened with security? Let me explain something to you, Ebon. In northern Nigeria, poverty has always been part and parcel of the social fabric. But food poverty was never a thing, because no matter how poor the people were, they could grow their food. They could stay in their villages. They were safe. So even though they might not have a kobo to their names, they had food on their table. They could eat. They could live with a roof over their heads. What has happened? On Buhari's watch, superintended again by the one who has now succeeded him, northern Nigeria has become essentially a theater of war because of illegal mining. And the illegal miners work under the licenses of different warlords whom you and I will call bandits. Bandits are carrying sophisticated arms. All manner of mineral resources are being mined in northern Nigeria, and there are more than sufficient evidences of this in the public space.
So how do you feel when you realize that the governor that superintended over Zamfara State, where there are so many bandits and where there are so many illegal miners, is now the Minister of Defense?
Put it this way. To look at any part of Nigeria or look to any one of the many functionaries of the Nigerian state and then be outraged, as I am when I look at someone like Matawale or whatever that one calls his name, being the one, even Bandit says that he's one of them. That's the one that is busy, they're calling the Minister of Defense. When you look at it, it's always very easy to be outraged by the insanities that we have normalized in our country. But I have found that it would only be a sense of selective outrage that will lead me to look at Matawale and be angry. Who am I supposed to look at, from the president to the Senate president to who am I supposed to look at within the Nigerian governing establishment and find some inspiration for hope? Who?
What do you have against the Senate president, by the way?
How many charges was it that he had with the EFCC before he became canonized by the Buhari government? Isn't that the same man that was being chased into the government house in his former state? Look, he is no better or worse than any one of the other ones. Take any one of the senators. I don't believe they are any better or worse than he is. It's just primus inter pares. They are all the same. Bar one or two, maybe, because I don't really know how you expect anything good to emerge from this sick system that we have. It's very easy to point fingers at Tinubu, Akpabio. Those are the primary examples of the society that we have managed to evolve. But are you going to look at the clergy and find anything better, really? Are you going to look, whether it's the Muslim cleric, the Christian clerics, where are you going to look at?
So when you look at the entire system and you say that the entire system is fraudulent, is decadent, is almost near what somebody I know, but I won't mention his name, who's a politician, he said many years ago that the case of Nigeria is hopeless. Are you at that point where you think...
No, I don't believe Nigeria's case is hopeless. No. The system is hopeless. You cannot reform our existing system. It's beyond redemption. I actually believe that any true lover of Nigeria should be sat somewhere as a collective making plans for the day after. This system is already dead. We are just trapped in a death spiral. I don't know how long it's going to take. Even the Americans, all of them are busy gaming the end of our country. The sick thing about our situation is that people are sat in Washington, D.C., and God knows how many think tanks around the world, and they are gaming our situation, and they've made conclusions that our country will collapse by 2030. And stuff that they had predicted are already happening, and we are seeing them happening. And we are sat like victims on the Titanic. We are rearranging deck chairs.
So Nigeria is not in a hopeless state.
If we, as a collective, find the grace to confront the truth of the hopelessness of our existing governance systems and structures, if we find the grace to tell ourselves that each and every one of us looking in our mirrors in the morning are just as guilty as the ones we have set over ourselves, because what we tolerate is what becomes the culture. We have tolerated these. We've become part and parcel of it. We are also guilty. I'm not exempting myself. I have my own blame in this. There are no saints and sinners here. Our situation has gone beyond the place of saints and sinners. We are all, to varying degrees, guilty. We've made all form of horrible compromises, all of us. But if we believe for 1 second that we can continue on our current trajectories without urgent turnaround, the reality is that even those ruining Nigeria whilst pretending to rule it have already concluded, even as the American and British sponsors have concluded, that Nigeria will die the way it's going. And they are making plans for the day after. We are the ones who have failed to make plans for the day after. There is no single person, and I say this without equivocation, who you may deem a member of the Nigerian elite who does not carry a second passport or have some form of residency in a foreign country. They've popularized buying up citizenship of one tiny island somewhere or the other. They have the level of capital flight out of Nigeria will tell you, with the way this current government is superintending the economy of Nigeria, that we've entered the end game. They have gamed that Nigeria is dead. We are the ones, the victims, who have failed to understand that when Nigeria collapses without us having planned for the day after, we are the ones who will be the victims.
So which of the islands have you got their passport?
I have never carried a second passport in my life. I do not have the residency of any other country aside from Nigeria. As I speak with you, the only reason I cannot claim that I do not have a foreign account is because I had to open one in 2010 when I was trying to buy a car in America, and I have less than $100 in it. I have no foreign property anywhere. With Nigeria, I'm all lean.
Okay.
I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah. So it means you're a stakeholder that will not go anywhere.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere.
So does that include protest and fight and
Let me put it this way.
Or whatever?
I don't do protests.
Okay.
I don't do protests because when you are protesting, there is an assumption that the person to whom you are protesting has the capacity to hear you, and because he has heard you, he would then make amends on account of your protest. Protests happened from the 1st of August. I believe it ended on the 10th.
Yes.
This government increased the fuel price instead of decreasing it. Does that seem like people who listen? This government is deaf and dumb, deliberately so, because it does not accord with the plan of this government to listen to the victims who believe themselves to be citizens.
So you're one of those that believe that this government does not care about the people.
As it, look, who steals power to care for those from whom it has stolen their inalienable right of sovereignty? Who does that?
Not possible. Okay, we'll take a short break. Let's pause here. When News Central exclusive with Dele Farotimi comes back, we'll get deeper into his views on the Nigerian Constitution. Would like to speak about the Nigerian Constitution and also take a look at your role in Labour Party and the obedient movement, what your role has been in it, and what you expect will happen going forward. Do stay with us. Don't go away. This is getting very interesting.
Across the globe, millions of Nigerians make their mark, forming one of the largest and most influential diaspora communities in the world. Imagine the impact that this powerful community could have in shaping Nigeria's future, not just through investments and advocacy, but through their voices at the polls. Yet, despite their passion and potential, the Nigerian diaspora remains sidelined in one key area: voting. Now, News Central presents its first ever Diaspora Town Hall meeting titled Harnessing the Power of the Diaspora, Enabling Diaspora Nigerians to Vote. Join us on the 28th of September 2024 at 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time and 4 p.m. West African Time as we discuss the rights of the diaspora community in voting and the implications for Nigeria. Tune in live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, and all our social media platforms.
Welcome back to News Central Exclusive. I'm still here with Dele Farotimi, a seasoned public speaker, lawyer, and author of books that have sparked important conversations about Nigeria's future. Before we were talking about Nigeria, the government, and a number of other things. So let's move on very quickly to the issue of the Constitution of Nigeria. A number of people have said there's a need for a constitution review, and others said don't review this constitution because it does not represent the thought, the mind, and the hearts of we the people. What is your own submission on this?
Remember that when you asked if there was hope or if our situation was hopeless, I made clear that the one thing that is required is the courage to confront the truth, that too many lies undergird the Nigerian state. And the Constitution is one of them. The 1999 Constitution, otherwise known as Decree 24 of 1999, is a fraud. Ab initio, it is a fraud. When the military took power in 1966, there was a constitution. That was the last constitution that the Nigerian people gave to themselves. After that constitution, what you have found are succession of frauds. The 1979 constitution, to a lesser extent, because at least Obasanjo pretended to listen to the Constituent Assembly until he then imposed the will of the Supreme Military Council on the recommendations of the Constituent Assembly. So what the Constituent Assembly recommended was way different from what the 1979 Constitution became. And to make matters worse, the 1999 fraud built on the original fraud of 1979. So what you had were a bunch of men and picked essentially by the military who did the best they could within the terms of reference they were given to write a constitution, and then they labeled it "We the People." Where they found the people that they were on whose behalf they were speaking, and now what they did is any different from what the British did when they were busy signing all kind of fraudulent treaties, I don't know. So what has happened is that Nigerians have exchanged one form of slavery for another. Because if you say "we the people," it would mean that the people have sat down and agreed that the original agreement that was broken in 1966, which had 4 regions, have now become 36 states, which has now become 37 by the grace of the Supreme Court and Samania and Co. at the PEP-T. So now you have 37 states of Nigeria, thanks to the fraudulence of everybody involved in their creation. So how do you reform a fraud? We all need to admit to ourselves that we are far away from the beginnings of the country that our fathers pretended to found. This is not where we were. Let me show you how sick our situation has become. In 1962, when the idea for the creation of the Midwestern region was mooted, a motion was passed by a 2/3 majority in the Western Regional Assembly. A plebiscite was held in the part of the Western region that became the Midwest. A motion was taken before the Federal House of Representatives in Lagos, and it passed by a 2/3 majority. That was the basis for creating a 4th region. A country that had such rigorous process for the creation of additional region now became the possession of successive military bandits, thieves, whom we all know are thieves. None of them can be pointed. Who are the people who created states in Nigeria? Yakubu Gowon. The joke in Britain till tomorrow is that when he came with half of Nigeria's treasury.
Bank treasury. Whether
that's true or not, for an anecdote, there must be elements of truth. And it's not, that generation is not particularly known for accountability. That was their joke. That's one of those who created states. And then you had Abacha, Obasanjo, Abacha creating states, Babangida. Those are the people, those are the founding fathers of Nigeria. Yorubas have this funny proverb. They say if you see the children of the household behaving like hooligans, look to the elders. They must be unworthy. The country that they have built is an indictment on the life they have all lived, because this country has become a mess and is collapsing in their lifetime, and they sustain the evil. So when they say "we the people," is a fraud.
So what do we do about our constitution?
We have to tell ourselves that we can't be afraid of sitting down together to tell ourselves the truth. Over the years, there have been some measure of consensus that have been reached across the divide. There is this basic understanding in Nigeria today that we have 6 zones. Treat those zones as regions, broadly. I don't have a monopoly of knowledge. There are other people who have suggested 8. Bring these different ideas to the table. Some people are saying that take the existing states and allow them to be able to regionalize. Whatever you need to do, do it.
Well, you have a situation where people are saying there's this allegation. Those who are in the National Assembly are comfortable. They're making so much money. There is no way they will remove themselves from
you see, this is the
by
you see, this is where we come back to where we started this conversation. I already told you, I wasn't shy about saying it. I said this system is not reformable. Nigeria will either descend into chaos or it might be saved by a revolution. The only way it is a revolution is when there is a plan for the day after the chaos. But the descent into chaos has already begun. We are seeing it. Our enemies have planned for it. If we are not careful, in fact, there is no care. Look, the government has lost control of its territory. That's why a Turuji or whatever his name is making video. You go to TikTok, you find different bandits sharing money. Bandit is doing giveaway, but it is Yele Sowore you are arresting because he says revolution. So
how do you stop this trajectory of this moving downward spiral into what you say will lead to chaos? How do you stop it?
Let me start by saying this. For 9 years, I've been in the public space, and everything I have warned every one of us would happen have happened. I challenge anyone to point at a single thing I've told us as a collective would happen to us that hasn't happened to us. So I'm done with telling us what will happen, unless when I'm asked, as you've asked me. What I'm more interested in is what we can do. And what we can do, as unpalatable as it might be for our people, they must understand this. The French word, revolver, it means to turn around. It means turn around. That is the root word for revolution. If we say we don't like our trajectories, trajectory meaning a movement of direction, that we're heading either towards a cliff or a wall, then we have to turn around. That is a revolution. Whether that revolution is by means of the peaceful one that the like of me has preached consistently, or the violent ones that are already taking place all over our country, because I have no doubt about it. What you call Islamic militants sometimes are in actual fact forms of revolution. Revolutions happen in concentric circles. If they didn't have legitimacy amongst the indigenous communities, they would not have grown. They are not spirits.
So
the militants in the Niger Delta is a form of revolution as well. So
if we're in a situation where it's obvious that we're doing a downward spiral, how far down the abyss would we go before we realize that we can't go any further?
What has kept Nigeria together have been three, in my own view, three broad lies. One, religion. Religion came to Nigeria to find its true meaning. If you look for the root of the word itself, religion, it comes from Latin, religio, or Old French, religare. It means to bind. That's to tie something together. Religion ties the imagination of men, and it tells them how to think and where to think. There is nothing intrinsically or inherently wrong with religion. But when it is aligned with poverty and then aligned with ignorance, what you find is that it becomes almost impossible to reach the person who has been so afflicted. That is what has happened to the Nigerian. So we've gotten to the point now where we, as a people, whoever calls himself leader in any way or form in Nigeria, whether you are in the news sector, whether you are in any form of profession, if you haven't gamed Nigeria has been dead, you now have to sit down and start thinking, what do we do with tomorrow? Because if you're saying how far down are we, we're actually really, really deep down. It's gotten so bad that the illusion that had kept peace in Nigeria, which had kept northern Nigeria supine since 1986-87, I think I mentioned this at my intervention at your event in Abuja the other day. The northern part of Nigeria had never been part of a conversation for change in Nigeria. Never. Since 1986-87, since after the SAP riot. Now, all of a sudden, thanks to the work of the likes of Bello Galadanchi, thanks to the works of the likes of Yele Sowore, thanks to the last electoral cycle, a lot of people have better information, and hunger has become the chief recruitment officer. The last protest was essentially about hunger. Hunger is a universal language. So the people are ready. It is the leadership that needs to align its thoughts and methodologies before if we crash
Yeah, so before we wrap up this segment of the conversation, I want to take you back.
Okay.
What do we do to get the nation to revolve to the point where we say a new constitution will happen? We can't force the hand of Mr. President.
We can't.
We cannot force the hand of the National Assembly. We can't force the hand of the State Assembly.
We can.
We can't force the state government.
We can.
How do we force their hand if you say we can't?
We can to each and every one of those.
How do we force their hands?
The we forms 99.9% of Nigeria. Let that we find the grace to speak together as one. Those who call themselves leaders,
Speak how? Through
find common purpose, whether that be through professional bodies, whether that be through traditional institutions as compromised as those have become, whether that be through religious organizations, whether that be through professional organizations. But let me explain something, sir. The first rule of survival, self-preservation, right? But self-preservation is found on enlightened selfish interest before you begin to advance. When selfish interest remains as unenlightened as the one that has happened in Nigeria, where you find the poverty of private wealth. People are so rich, they are driving Rolls Royce, they are driving all kinds of exotic cars on bumpy roads. They can't go anywhere without carrying 10,000 mopos. Poverty of private wealth. Poverty of private wealth. That is all it is. The healthcare infrastructure, everything has collapsed. So if we're...
I still want to hear, how do we? You said we
have to get... See, that is why I said, because those who call themselves...
They don't want protests. The people that are mentioned, the presidency, the National Assembly...
is not dependent on them.
Okay, so what will the people do?
See,
to get their hands...
If the people are more aroused by ethnic hatred, if they are more focused on religious bigotry, if they are fine with being distracted by the occasional handout of spaghetti at election time,
or rice,
case may be, I can scream and screech from now till kingdom come. And that is why I have come to the point in my life. I lost a dear friend recently. May God rest his soul. But it has taught me a lesson. All of us are transient beings. We're here today, and we may be gone tomorrow. So I'm not going to waste whatever is left of my life trying to tell somebody who is awake to wake up. Yorubas will say, ẹni tó sùn là ń jí, ẹnìkan kì í bá wọn jí apirọrọ. It is the man who is sleeping that you arouse. You don't awaken the man pretending to be asleep. Am I the one who has to tell these religious traders that the country is collapsing around their ears and they should tell their congregation? They could march on the street and be praying nonsensical prayers, but they cannot speak in support of the right of citizens to protest. How many pastors? Am I the one who will tell them that? Am I the one who will tell the imams who went to Aso Rock and the lesser imams were given, the lesser clerics were given $10,000 and the bigger ones were given 20? Am I the one who will tell them to stop lying to the victims of their excesses? If I'm working to awaken the people to find common purposes, and those who are called in the name of God are busy profiting from the misery of the people and being paid off to be silent, to the point where clerics have become distribution point for palliatives. So I cannot waste my life. In actual fact, I think about 4 or 5 years ago, I wrote a piece, I do not write for you. What was I saying? I'm not speaking or writing for this generation anymore. It's a waste of time. But I am playing my own role. What I have discerned as my purpose for living, I am doing it. History would absolve me. And coming generations will either read of my work or find things that I have said, and they will remember there was a sane one amongst them, even though it was the one they deemed insane. But my conscience is clear. I go into my bed, I'm asleep within 2 minutes, Within 2 minutes, I'm sleeping. regardless of what the storms might be. My conscience is clear.
Okay. So on that note, we're going to have to take a break. But before I go, let me ask you this very quick question.
All right, sir.
Because we're going to go into the details of it. Some people said that President Tinubu is definitely the wrong person to have as the president of Nigeria at this point.
Most definitely.
And some people said definitely the candidate that you supported in the last election, Mr. Peter Obi, is not a messiah.
It's definitely not.
So why did you support him?
Why do we need a messiah?
So why did you support him?
He was the best candidate in the race. He was the candidate, he was the very best candidate by a country mile. There was no other candidate in the race that could have united Nigeria and set it on the trajectory to what would have been considered a peaceful revolution. He would have turned this country around without look.
So if Peter Obi was 2027, 2031, and
no. I am a creature of reason. In 2022, leading into 2023, Peter Obi was the best candidate in the race. If the election would hold tomorrow, I'll still vote for Peter Gregory Obi on the basis of the objective realities. That is still the person for whom I'd vote.
Okay. On that note, we'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. Please don't go away.
Across the globe, millions of Nigerians make their mark, forming one of the largest and most influential diaspora communities in the world. Imagine the impact this powerful community could have in shaping Nigeria's future, not just through investments and advocacy, but through their voices at the polls. Yet, despite their passion and potential, the Nigerian diaspora remains sidelined in one key area: voting. Now, News Central presents its first ever Diaspora Town Hall meeting titled Harnessing the Power of the Diaspora, Enabling Diaspora Nigerians to Vote. Join us on the 28th of September 2024 at 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time and 4 p.m. West African Time as we discuss the rights of the diaspora community in voting and the implications for Nigeria. Tune in live on DSTV channel 422, StarTimes channel 274, and all our social media platforms.
You're welcome back to News Central Exclusive. My guest and friend who's on this program today that we're having conversation is Mr. Dele Farotimi, an author, a lawyer, and an advocate for great things for the nation, Nigeria. Good to still have you here. So, Peter Obi's rise in the Labour Party has been significant. However, you've said that he should stop dictating to the party. According to some people, they quoted you as having said that. What do you think is the best way forward for the Labour Party today?
Well, I think for the opening time, I have to clarify myself. I am not a member of the Labour Party.
Are you an obedient? Part of the obedient movement?
I am a part of the obedient movement.
Yeah.
Because I believe in the ideals that brought all of us together. And as long as those ideals remain sacrosanct, I remain completely and utterly obedient. And if I may say so, the people you call obedient today were obedient before there was a Peter Obi. What you call obedient today are the victims of Nigeria who recognized themselves since before NSAS, after NSAS. That was what morphed into what became the obedient movement. The only part of that movement that did not become part is the Revolution Now part. In reality, that's the Showorek people. Every other person who had been aggrieved about Nigeria for a season found room in what became known as the obedient movement. So I am a member and part of that movement. But I am not a member of the Labour Party. And as it relates to that question,
or advice for them?
What happened was this. I believe I was being interviewed and I was asked to comment on Kenneth Okonkwo's reservation about Peter Obi's management of, or intervention or lack thereof, in affairs of the Labour Party. And I said that as a Democrat, I don't expect Mr. Peter Obi to be dictating the terms of peace in the Labour Party. But that it wasn't my own business. That Peter Okonkwo and Kenneth Okonkwo is a politician. Peter Obi is a politician. They have divergent views on how a political issue should be managed. But that is none of my business, and it remains none of my business.
So you're not a politician, but
I am not a politician. I am a victim of Nigeria who is looking for a way out of the mess Nigeria is in. If that requires me to intervene politically, as I did in the 2023 electoral cycle, I would.
Let's look at this issue of political alliances going forward then. Yeah. Would you still support Peter Obi in 2027 if he were to join another political movement,
Put it this way.
APC or SDP or anyone?
Put it this way. In the 2023 election cycle, anyone who didn't know me too well would have thought that I would have supported my friend, Omoyele Sowore. But I looked at the objective realities on the ground. Yele was one of the very first persons I told I would be supporting Peter Obi. And I supported Peter Obi, and I'm proud of myself for having done so. The objective realities have not changed as we speak today. I don't believe any of the political parties to be any different from the other. They are all essentially the same. But a man's word counts for something, and a man's record should count for something. I looked at all those in making my decision in 2023. If Peter Obi now goes and forms alliances with persons I do not believe shares my own objective for Nigeria, because let's be clear, I want to see a Nigeria where everybody who has stolen from our commonwealth vomits what they have stolen.
And go to prison?
We can make deals that allows people to even keep part. We can have some amnesty program. I'm not suggesting that everybody must go to jail or face firing squad, but they must account for what they have stolen. They can't go and sin no more. If you have stolen from Nigeria, whether we are talking Babangida, whether we are talking Obasanjo, whether we are talking Akpabio, everyone who has ruled Nigeria must account for their wealth. You must pay back. Whatever office you have held in this country, you cannot go and sin no more.
Do you think that a Peter Obi would ask them to pay back what they
Let me put it this way. There was a discussion I had with Peter Obi, and it wasn't just me. The Afenifere was part of that discussion. The Southern and Middle Belt Leaders Forum was part of that discussion. And it was very clear that whilst he might not be interested in pursuing such cases, it would not obstruct those who might seek to pursue such cases. There are ample provisions in our laws, if they are allowed to work, to make people accountable for their deeds.
Well,
So,
I can say pointedly that myself, Kade Akintemi, I sat with President Buhari, formerly General Buhari at that time. I sat with him in my office at a different television station, and he said to me, I am repeating what he said to me, he said, if he becomes the president of Nigeria, everyone who has stolen from Nigeria will be arrested, they will be made to pay back, and they will go to prison. It never happened.
I'm sorry.
That is deemed as failure on his part.
I'm sorry, please.
Yes.
Let me say this. If you believed that Muhammadu Buhari was going to fight corruption,
He said it.
No, I'm not
words.
saying.
Those are his words.
Yeah, it's fine.
I heard him. He's not somebody told me.
He could tell
He
you
said
that.
it to me
No, he
directly.
could tell you that.
Yes.
But a man's record should count for something. How could a man whose entire tenure in office the first time was blighted by corruption be talking about fighting corruption? And to make matters worse, the APC is essentially a conglomeration of thieves. I'm not the, you don't have to take my word. Listen to what Oshie Omole said. Join us. Come to the APC and your sins are forgiven. Muhammadu Buhari was the chief laundryman in that APC before he himself became the night salesman, deodorizing all form of putrid impunity. You can't call what happened on his watch corruption. That wasn't corruption. Impunity. The knowledge that nothing will happen. We can do anything we like, and what has happened?
Nothing has happened.
Nothing has happened.
Even with the government that is there now.
Look, how is this government different from that government?
It's all the same as
far
as you're
concerned.
It's the same. Okay, so in that case then, if Peter Obi were to join hands with any of the other candidates who lost in the last election, and decide to join another political party, would you still support him?
Based on what ideals? I'm not about persons. Persons matter in relation to the credibility of their words. Persons matter solely in relation to the credibility of their words. If a man is an habitual liar and he tells the truth, you know, the truth is not necessarily devalued in his mouth, but it must be because I have recognized the truthfulness of what the person is telling me. But if a Peter Obi, who I know and I can take his word, turns around and he tells me he's going to join a party, the next question I'm going to ask him, because when he went to Labour Party, I didn't follow him into Labour Party, but I did ask him, what are you doing? What is the basis of your presence in the political space? I was swayed on the basis of his plan, not on the basis of the party.
Okay, so, all right, as we wrap up now, 1 year after your prediction that Tinubu won't appoint ministers that will change Nigeria, how do you feel about the government's recent ministerial appointments? Have any of them surprised you? And the fact that he set up a team led by Hadiza Bala Usman to be the class monitor for all of them and to rank and rate them and be able to say, this is their scores. How do you feel about those ministers? And do you think any of them have done anything that is commendable?
They've been extremely successful. It was always their job to tax us, to assail us, to make the Nigerians' life intolerable. And they have done exactly as Rehoboam has directed them. They were never coming to give us anything. They came to assail us, and they've done exactly that. If you were expecting anything from them, you might be disappointed by what they have done. I had no expectation of either them or the person who has appointed them. What was the purpose of their appointment? Come and chop. So when you are continuing to eat from an empty bowl.
So where do you stand on the issue of the likes of former Governor Wike, who's now Minister of the FCT?
The aspiring Hitler of Obiakpo. The only thing about Wike is that the man is constantly garrulous about nothing meaningful. Cacophonous windbag. That's all he is. He goes around like a court jester. I don't know what he does with himself, but I certainly know that he has been ruinous for the people he has governed. What is the human resource development index of the state he governed? He's pointing at bridges. That's where you embezzle money now. So it's easy to be awarding road contract. How many schools? What's the quality of teachers? What kind of access to good education, internet services do the people have? What's the quality of life? What's security like? They're busy, the kind of dirty diesel being burnt, Port Harcourt with all the suit and everything, with the insecurity ones. Look, posterity will judge each and every one of us. Before Wike, there were some people. There were many others before him. Clowns whom history have forgotten today.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. Let me go full circle and come back to one of the things I've not touched on. You wrote a book where you said, do not join you do not... do
not die in their war.
Yes. So the war that they're fighting is a war that some people have described as who can loot the most. And others have said who can have more power and be at the helm of affairs and be the emperor the most. How do you see the war today as your final word? How do you see the war, and what can be done for those Nigerians who do not want to be the one that their head is used as coconuts?
Well, our situation is dire. But see that war, the war between them is over. We are the ones they have now declared war against. When I say the war between them is over, it's very easy to figure out. Let me show you. In the 2023 election cycle, INEC would have us believe that in the federal elections, when it came to the presidential election, there was a glitch. But that glitch did not affect either the Senate or the House of Reps. Remember? But it affected the presidency. There was some sort of detente reached to ensure that, okay, even though we will take the presidency for ourselves, we would allow the House of Reps and Senate to fly. And then we would co-opt those ones. That's why they've become one in the National Assembly, whether they went through labor or anything, because the main change was the character of the presidential candidate. So they've already compromised the system. So their own war is over as a collective. The dawn of their class, the capo, the tutti, the capi, is sat in Aso Rock today. They can cut any deals. That's why they will, Sim and Wike will be quarreling. They will carry their quarrel to Aso Rock and you'll be telling them how it will end. That's how there will be threats of civil unrest in August, and he will call clerics and people and be telling them how he purchased his seat. So their own war is over. None of his class are going to fight him. Their war is over. We are the victims of this war, because the war that is coming is, in fact, the war that is here now is the one against us as common Nigerians.
So let's use that as the wrapping, at the point, the way to wrap this up and say that, so October 1st is when Revolution Now and Take Back Nigeria and a number of other youth movements are having, that's when they're saying we want to anchor another demand for a revolution, which you said is a revolving or turning round.
You see,
what do you think of that October 1 possible revolution?
It has never been in my character to prescribe to the oppressed how it might respond to his oppressor. And it is not the duty of the oppressor to free the oppressed. It is the duty of the oppressed to break his chains. I am not a protest person. If I was in town on the 1st of October, I still will not come out to protest. If they tell me it's a revolution and that they show me a plan for the day after, I'll be out there. It's the plan for the day after that I haven't seen. If I have managed, and I think that's the next phase of my own struggle. I'm taking a break. I'm going to be taking it easy. When I get back from my break, it is my intention, that's assuming we have time, that's assuming I'm still alive as well, to seek to coordinate like-minded people to begin to plan for the day after. But that some people who want to protest, I'm all for it. They should go right ahead. It's their right as citizens. They should go ahead and protest. Even though they are protesting to the death, eventually, the partners of the deaf in the Western world would have to explain to their people why they are enforcing different standards in their own country and in our own. So
on that note, Dele Farotimi, author and lawyer and
retired
motivational speaker. Are you saying you're retired from law?
Oh, yes, I am.
We didn't get to speak about the judiciary in one sentence. How do you see our judiciary today?
As beautiful as every other part of our country.
Awesome.
Awesome. Awesomely beautiful. Just as beautiful as our police, as our customs, as our clergy. Our judiciary is us, completely Nigerian.
Reflects who we are as a nation.
Completely. It reflects us.
And will the word despicable come to your mind?
Everything that describes Nigeria, obscene, abominable, putrid, everything that describes our beautiful country in the state that we have built it, describes our judiciary. It's no different from the police station.
Well, I think we're going to have to do another conversation and talk about the judiciary. So it's such a joy and a pleasure to have you, Mr. Dele Farotimi.
The views and opinions expressed during this program are solely those of the individuals involved and do not reflect the views of Explorewithsu. As such, this channel cannot be held liable for any legal actions arising from the content of this program.